Good day and welcome to Tough Talk. My name is Steve Gadier and my co-host today are
Mama Sunyande.
Delissa Mbewe.
today we are joined by Dr. Masika, who's going to be talking about two things. One, he's contesting the upcoming council elections, and two, he's also going to talk to us about domestic violence or violence against women. So welcome, Dr. Masika.
Thank you so much.
Okay, to start with, let's jump into the council elections. What inspired you to contest the election, and why do you think you are the appropriate candidate?
Yeah, thanks so much for making me part of this conversation again. I remember it has been a while since I appeared for the first one. Responding to the question you've asked, what inspired me to contest for the council election, it's my experience. I've lived in Marriott Council for over 20 years, and I have that knowledge and intimate knowledge of what are the issues the community in Marriott Council facing, and how those issues can be resolved. So I want to join the council to contribute to my experience and make a deliverable community in South Australia.
And what are those issues?
The issues, you need a council where you need to have a very good rubbish collections, you have good pathways, also lighting security is good, and people, they feel safe to be there. And they also, we have infrastructures like sports venues and sports grounds where people they can come and the kids play sports, and the families they can come and also be part of the society through sports. So those are the areas which I'm quite interested in. I want to make sure that everyone enjoy, and those facility infrastructures are available and they're accessible by everyone.
For those of us who don't really know much about the council election, what does that intake? So what are the criteria that are required to be elected, and what is as voters we need to know about those we're voting for?
Yeah, so with the local government election is different from the normal state or federal elections. For the local government elections, number one, anyone can vote who live in the area. You don't need to be a citizen to vote. Anyone can vote, so long you live in the area which your candidate is coming from. And the second thing, anyone, you can nominate. You don't need particularly to be a citizen to be nominated, but you need to be living that area. So that is one. And the second thing, it's not, you're not bound to any political party. You are just an individual. But once you are elected, you make a decision on behalf of the council, not for the area which you have been elected. You will be standing for a small area, but the decision will be for the entire council, not for your small area. You are not representing a small area. So that's the beauty of that one there. And the other thing, with the local government elections, you don't need a quota, like in the normal election for state or federal government, federal parliament. You need to reach a certain quota before you can be elected. But for the local government, you can up to 100%, always around the 30% of people vote. It's 70% of the people that don't vote, they don't care. So 30% vote. So you can get 500 votes and you are the winner. But with the state election, if you want to go to the, let's say, upper house, you need to have almost 95,000 votes. So it becomes very hard on that side. So, and the other things with the local government, it's not a paid position, it's a voluntary. It's the same as when you become a community leader. Yeah, it's not paid. You are putting your hands up to say, yes, I can come, I have experience, I have knowledge, I can contribute to that one. Although there's a sitting allowance, it's not that much. But people, they go there because of contributing their experience and knowledge to make the city livable, and the people that can enjoy being part of the city.
Okay, so then you talk about those issues you have identified, right? If you were to win, how do you go about introducing those changes or fixing those problems?
When you are elected, you are not representing your local area. You are representing, you will be making a decision on behalf of the entire area, the council. So everything comes in, and those elected councillors, they sit on different committees, depends your interest. Other people, they sit on planning and development committees, other they sit on other infrastructure committees. So it depends which part you want to be involved. But everything which, when it comes to the council, attention needs to be discussed, and the decision it's been done based on the merits of each individual request comes on the board, on the council. So I know issues of being safe or security lights, rubbish collections, having streets which are good and you can pass, they are sealed, and there's no potholes everywhere you go. Those will be priority, and then making sure that we have good sporting venues which is accessible and providing up comfort to the people who are using them and the young people. So it will be really good. So my intention is to make sure that all the people that can be able to utilize the services being offered by the council, and also young people that can be able to utilize the services, also young families, because we have different groups who are living in the council. So I would love to see each one enjoying whatever being offered by the council.
So for those who want to get engaged with the council election, where can they find information, or how can people get in touch with you?
Those who are living in Marion Council, they can go and register. We go to local government associations, or you go to your own local council, you'll find out for registration to vote, because the registration is closing on the 10th of August. Everyone has to register. So as I say, you don't need to be permanent resident or citizen. Anyone can, even if you come today, so long you are you are going to live in that area, you have the address, your address showing that you live in that area, you can just go on the website straight away and download the form and then register. There are some people who have helped them to give them the forms. They can register, can collect them, deliver them at the council to make sure that the forms are in before 10th of August. So if you don't register, that means your vote. And the other things which with the local government, you don't need to go to the polling station to vote. So they will send the envelope with the voting papers to you. And you put up the names you want, and then tick, 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 and then send it back to the Electoral Commission. And they'll count and they'll know who has won the votes.
Okay, quickly, before we go to the next topic, what are some of the challenges do you see being some of the issues that might challenge you, or some of the advantages and strength from your experience you may have in this election?
This election is, you have to be known outside. And if you are quite new, nobody knows you, so it's going to be very hard. So for my case, probably it's different, because I've been involved with so many number of other communities. I'm a Rotarian, so with the Rotary Club of Edwardstown, which is based where I'm standing. Yeah. So that one can give me advantage. And I've also contributed substantially to the local government through the Marion Council. Like in the area which I live, there was no playground for the kids. So what we did, the council negotiated with the state government. So they bought a block of land, which the state government demolished 10 houses, housing trust, and then they're selling up the land. So Marion Council bought the land, but they're looking at the partners to contribute to develop this playground. So we needed about $2.2 million dollars to make it developed. So through Rotary Club, I have to bring money in. So we contributed substantially into that one. So I've got the photos when we went there the first day to turn up the soil, and then when we came to the launch of the playground, so me and the Christiana, the mayor for the Marion Council, and the local member of parliament for that area, so we are the three of us launching up that one there. So that is for the one which is where I'm staying, but he also supported the one for the all-inclusive playground for the children living with a disability. They don't have anywhere to go to play. So the council also brought the land, and they have to go to look for money. So by doing that, that means I know so many people. The people, they know my contribution to that one day. So that will be advantage. So to that one day.
So just to be clear, are you running to become a mayor or councillor?
No, councillor. Yeah.
So going to your work within the raising funds and raising awareness around domestic violence and violence against women, what has made you so passionate about this cause?
Yeah, so that is a very interesting point. I became advocate of domestic violence against women for very many years. So, and probably this is connected to my mom, relationship which I had with my mom. because that was instilled directly from my mom to me. Yeah, where we come from, some culture issues, they dictated different conditions between the boys and girls. Yes. And my mom could see that one there. So mom used me as as agent of change to make sure that if she's around or she's not around, but that voice keep going on, to make sure that in this world, boys and girls can be given equal opportunity. So I've been involved for so many years as an advocate, but when this movement started 2000, in 1992, started with the United Nations, when they declared the International Day for Elimination of all forms of domestic violence against women and girls. But that movement didn't come first to Australia. Australia started picking up that in 2000. And in mid-2000 is when I became ambassador. So in South Australia, we are the quite first one. So we are 3 of us, and then we started building up the number. And it's a big movement of men's movement, and what we want to achieve is elimination of all form of violence against women and girls.
The narrative of domestic and family violence is heavily focused on the women as victims of abuse. How do you think that affects how we engage men or even young boys into fighting and becoming advocates like yourself for stopping family and domestic violence?
Yeah, it's really good to know. When you look up at statistics of domestic violence, you find the 1 in 3 of women will have been physically bashed by intimate partner or current or past partner can do that. Or they look up at statistics also that 1 in 4 women will have sexual abused. But it will be again by men. And then you look, if you combine those physical and sexual abuse, you find 1 in 5. So it's a very big number. And when you look up in, let's say in South Australia, you find that at least 70% of domestic violence is victims are women. Men is 30%. And that's why we put so emphasis on women, on men to change up behavior. And you can't change only men, you have to change also the boys. And you don't change up overnight, it will take generations. You can take a generation to change up behavior being perpetuated from one generation to the other. So there are so many things happening in schools, try to bring up those projects, programs of positive relationships where the boys can understand, and also educate men and involve men. Because once you can change one man and another man can change another man, it will be fantastic. We are heading right direction, but you'll find that we are still struggling, because when you turn up the radio, you find a woman has been killed by the partner. So we used to be 1 in 3. Sometimes we're heading 2 in 3, which is sad. We want to change that one day. Yeah. So we hope that by bringing this message to the boys, young mind is still in primary school, they can understand the negative impact it's causing on when they engage into domestic violence. So when they grow up, we hope that they can project that positive attitude. And you also understand that both sexes are equal, because that is still the issue which we are struggling.
As a short term, something that will evaporate over time?
I don't believe this is a short term. I think this Me Too movement, let's pick an example. It has highlighted how the issue is chronic in our communities. And it's also showing up, there are so many men up there who they are doing horrible things to women. They don't have that respect. And they have that see women as a tool or object for pleasure, rather than thinking that both are equal footings. So this is not going to be short term, and there's very good exposure, and the people have taken notes. And those who are thinking they can hide behind and do whatever they wanted, there's not that opportunity anymore. And also this Me Too movement has empowered women that, don't feel weak, have that voice, come and speak. Be honest to yourself, come and expose what happened, and the men, they will take responsibility. And that's why we see some that are still in denial, but they've been exposed. And everyone will be a question that if I do this, I'm going to be exposed. So it deter people not to do things which is not right. And also, by bringing education and supporting men to understand, we can see some change of attitude. And so we are not depending on one methodology, but all other things which are coming up will help that cause. And the intention is to change, the way we behave and think of women, and also how we don't treat we don't treat both sexes equally. So that I believe it's not a short term. There will be a very big gain, and in particular those people in position of power.
Okay, then say another thing is women have achieved progress over the years, especially in politics and in corporate positions. Say, for example, Julia Gillard became president or Prime Minister of Australia. Yeah. But then on the one hand, we still have entrenched issue of violence against women or abuse of women by men in power. How come, on the one hand, women have made huge, significant progress, but in the issue of domestic violence hasn't tagged along, and they are still behind in that area?
Yes, no, in any social change, it doesn't work. It doesn't come and change overnight. I said this is an issue which needs to be confronted from different angles. Let's go back to where this white ribbon movement started, or why did the United Nations decided we have International Day for Elimination all form of domestic violence against women. You go back to Canada, February 1998. 1989 or 98, I can't remember exactly. You see, at university, we had a group of girls, there are 14 of them, they are doing engineering course. They wanted to be engineers. But there are some men who believe women are not entitled to be engineers. It's only men who can become engineers. And what happened on that day, this young man came with a gun and a knife, and he slaughtered all 14 women in the classroom. He killed all of them. That's where the movement started. And when he was asked, why did he kill all these student women doing degree engineering? He said, women are not entitled to become engineers. So women, they belong in the kitchen and looking after the family. That's in mind. That's how it was in his mind. Now, from there, we can see we've made a very big progress. Women have been supported. Women have taken position of power. And that is one front. The other thing, with the domestic violence, it doesn't happen in public. It happens inside, privately. Until we know what's going on, is when we see some issues. So what we are doing is to empower women to a voice, to say, look, enough is enough. You can't be doing this. I have to expose you. It doesn't matter that you're being told, yeah, you're a woman, you have to persevere, you have to do this. So women, they're coming up. They're talking. And that is really good. It's one way of stopping this domestic violence. The other thing which is happening is the mass campaigning, which we have supporting women through sports clubs. Now all the players, they're young, they're talking about it. They're going to schools. Port Adelaide, in Cross, they're going to schools. Each can visit 20 schools each. And so it's a very big campaign. We are making that, changes, but we haven't been there. But we need to continue with the same effort. But the good thing, we have seen a good number of women now come into corporate, become leaders, become in boardrooms, become in politics. I know, Rwanda is an example. 64% in the parliament are women. Very impressive. Around the world, that's a score that is taken position around the world. So each country, they're trying to say, okay, how can we promote that? How can we empower women also to take those positions? So we are not yet there, but let's keep talking, let's keep moving, and let's support women to continue doing that, and let's keep educating ourselves, women, because that's what this issue is. And also, I normally challenge the religious leaders, because we have religion. I'm a person of faith-based. I'm a Roman Catholic. But there are things which I read in the Bible, which probably to give people another false impression or another false power to use against women. I know there are some verses, they say women shall subject to their husband the way Christ subjected to the church. I know that has good meaning, but the people, they abuse that. They say, you see, you are I'm the boss. You submit to myself. And not they revert on violence to make women do that, which is wrong. The same with Islam. They have some verses which they are around that notion, which is not good. But we don't want to challenge the religious leaders to say, look, you need to educate your fellows. You need to talk about this one there, that those verses that are there, not to demean or to control the women, but we have to see that all of us, we are politically, legally, and everything, we're equal. God didn't make one lesser than the other.
Yeah, just so going back to the religion point where in the Bible it says women submit to your husbands. But I think a lot of times people pinpoint certain verses in the Bible or the Quran to fit the crime that they're committing. Because just above that verse, it also says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. And a lot of men forget that part of the Bible and just focus on the woman submitting herself. Going into our communities, the fact that you've been part of the African Community Councils for many years now, you said you've been here for over 20 years or so. You've seen the progress of the African communities, different backgrounds, and the growth that has occurred. How do you think our communities can push the notion of DV, and how best can you as a community leader and other community leaders help to make it a notion and give a voice to the issues that's going on behind closed doors?
Yeah, so it's a very good point. Based on my 20 years experience, I think the community members, they start coming to the point of understanding that domestic violence has no space in any civilized family or civilized society. It has no space, and nobody should condone or should keep quiet when they see domestic violence happening, or men using up those words to demean up women. So when you go back in 1996, in 98, all the way to early 2000, we see so many family breakdown. You see, and when you go back, you find it's domestic violence. And men, they are putting brakes on their feet. They say, look, it's my culture. Yeah. It's my culture. Say, look, I should discipline my wife. I should do this. I should do this. And that's the same thing the Bible says. And when they came here, they find that the system is different. Because in Africa, where I come from, men are breadwinners. They have to go and work so hard to make sure they come feed the family and they provide the roof over the family and they, provide the health care for the family. But coming here, both being new, and the government is there to support the family. The men wanted the money for the family money to go to the men, but the government has put the system that said, look, this man should go to the mother to look there. But it's not the money for this woman. It's money for the family. But men, they didn't accept that. And for them, they said, look, they use up force, they use this. There was a very big percentage of family breakdown. If you go to the family court, we had almost, so many cases were stuck in there. But looking back now, the number has dropped so significantly because everyone's thinking that, no, if I do this, I'll be embarrassed. Everyone, they will know. Although it's still happening, but it's not the big scale like it used to be before. So I believe that with the time and supporting the young ones, we won't see that happening. Because if we can empower girls to say, look, you shouldn't accept this. And you tell the boys, you shouldn't say this about the girls. So you should respect what you say, and you should accept that both sexes are equal. So we look forward in long term to have a society which domestic violence becomes a part of an issue. When you go back and look up at the cost of domestic violence in terms of families, individuals, and everything, it's a killer. It's breaking up families, tearing the families apart. It's, and you look up, give you an example from the statistics which I shared with you. The government, like 2014-15 budget, spent about $15 billion to support the victims of domestic violence. Not only look up it's only women, look up the children, look up also the issue when there's domestic violence, there's families breakdown, the children, they becomes dysfunctional. And they become, the mother and the children, they can be homeless. So the government has to step in to provide accommodation. And there's the issues of psychological well-being. They have to undergo counseling. That sometimes there's physical injuries. They have to be treated. And the children, if they become dysfunctional, they can't be protected, the government have to step in. They have to provide child protection to this safety to these children. It's a cost. And if men, you've been kicked out of your home, become homeless. So there's so many issues. And the community breaks down. All the nations break down. That's why we're saying, look, there's no room for domestic violence. The way we are trying to tackle the issue of you have to put your seat belt. And if you don't do it, you're punished. And you have to drink and drive, you can't do it. And you can't use a mobile phone while you're driving. So we continue with the same vein, that the domestic violence is not acceptable.
You discussed a lot about the culture and, you know, when people move from Africa, let's say, and they move to Australia, there's a lot of changes in the family structure. How do you think mainstream services are helping to, or do you think that they are helping to kind of bridge the cultural shock that a lot of people feel, that they don't think maybe perhaps I can get support for domestic violence because I don't think that those services necessarily understand that within my culture, this is how my family structure should look?
Yeah, so I know within those families in the African community, men that can do that, there's a help out there. But sometimes because of ego, and sometimes because of ignorance, it can be sometimes. And sometimes lack of motivation. Why should I go? And they come with the wrong perception from the word go, that the government is favoring women. Everywhere you go, you say, if I say something, they're not going to listen to what I'm saying. It's everything's women, women, women. No, it's not like that. And on the other side, the service providers, because of cultural differences, they don't know how to engage with the men sometimes. And the way, or how they engage with the families or the men is so directly, it becomes confrontational, or somebody feel that, okay, I'm being embarrassed here, I'm doing this, and then they don't take up those services. So what needs to happen is to educate men that domestic violence is not acceptable. And if you are struggling, either because of traumatic past, you are trying to use up alcohol or drugs to suppress pain, and that can lead you to spiral to go into domestic violence. Yeah. So it's better you seek help. Yeah. And for us or anyone who is there needs to support the organization to understand how they can engage with this in communities which they've never been here. Because cultural differences is a big issue. And also we needed to find out, an example is service providers, they prepare the materials, writing materials. They go to the doctor's clinic, they put there, they say, we've already done our job. So they expect whoever goes there will look at the doctors there and then they'll pick up and read. But you can find out the man has never been in school. Or the language which is there is English, but this man doesn't speak English or doesn't speak Arabic. But we have to find a way to educate the service providers. That's okay. Although there's limited with the resources, but if you want to be effective to engage with these people, this is the way we can do it. By considering culture, considering the communication in terms of using interpreters and everything. So there's a long way to go to educate and support the service providers, and also to educate the men about how to utilize the services which has been funded by the government, and also how they can try to not to tip into the other side and end up in domestic violence.
And I think that's where a lot of our community leaders will come into play, because there's been a lot of domestic violence issues in various African communities now, where the president of that community would try and counsel the family through the process. So regarding having service providers that do cater to our cultural needs or religious needs, it's also important that those who we choose to elect in power to represent our communities be trained in, let's say, directing us to proper services or being able to provide the service the services for us themselves. And because if my community leader is able to understand my problem better than an Australian person, I would rather go to her and have her deal with my issues personally.
Yeah, that's absolutely cool. It's really good to see community leaders stepping up and they try to support the families. One thing which I think the government needs to do, and it hasn't been done, is to create a tool which can be used by religious leaders and the community leaders for them to understand the impact of domestic violence to the families, to individuals, to the families, to the community, and also to know who are outside there, culturally appropriate, they can support the victims and also the perpetrator. Because the perpetrator can say, yeah, you are the victim and we deal with the victim and we leave the person who has caused that. And the person also needs some help to understand the impact he has caused, the negative impact of his or her action towards the domestic violence. And the other things, it needs to have the community leaders to be able to report and say, look, we have children here involved. There are children in this family, but they're being subjected to domestic violence because that has a psychological impact. There are people that say, no, I didn't hit my child. I love my children. But the children are being subjected to constant domestic violence. They see dad and mom every time, although not punching, but the verbal exchange, those abusive through verbal exchange, they've also impact on these children. And the children, they'll think, this is the way we sort out the differences. And we see them doing exactly the same. So the community leaders, the religious leaders, they needed to be empowered to report up, to be pick up the phone and say, look, for the sake of taking care of these children's well-being, we needed to let the service providers know that there's something going here. When the service provider comes in, probably it can be the beginning of supporting the man or the wife, depends on the circumstances, or to understand what the issue is going around and to provide that support to the family.
Yeah. That's a beautiful point, Dr. Masika, about community leaders reporting. But I think the dilemma is when sort of the cultural implications of that in terms of community perception around that, and when is it appropriate to report and when is it appropriate to remain silent. But my question is, you could also I'll speak to that, but my question has to do with your trip to Africa. Like, in a comparative sense, what are the similarities and dissimilarities in the plight of women in Africa compared to Australia, for example?
Domestic violence. Okay, the domestic violence in in Africa we don't keep statistics, but I know it's a big issue. It's a it's a major issue over there, and it's being controlled by the two factors: religion and also culture. I know, and also you find that women in Africa, they don't have voice compared to those who are here. Those who are in Australia, find the majority of women they live in the cities and towns where they have better access of information and services. But in Africa, we live in rural. 65% of women they'll be living in rural areas where there's no services or information about domestic violence. And there, since day one, the girls, when they grow up, they're being told, you have to respect your husband. Whatever the husband said, it becomes like a law, And if you don't, you'll be subjected to violence. And the other things which in here, they don't have dowry, the way we pay there. The men there, they pay dowry, but they abuse. They think paying dowry, they bought up the person. And which becomes an issue. And I remember when I got married, I said to my brothers and sisters, we are 14 in my family. But the good thing is all of us, we were given education to university. But we say, okay, if I marry my wife, it's not you coming to cook for everyone. It's me and her, so not everyone. And but in other families, you go there, you are married to one family member, you become, being used by everyone to, yeah, you become our wife, which is, you are there taking care of the children, taking care of the house and everything. We don't have luxurious things here like a gas stove. You just switch it on there, water coming out from the tap, and you don't need to go kilometers and kilometers to fetch water, to fetch firewood. and they come and they cook up and those, you know, they're using fire. You come out with the smoking in your eyes, in your brain, and everywhere. So you find out people they don't have interest in life. So it's completely two sides which they're completely different. But domestic violence over there is huge. The problem is we don't keep data.
Yeah.
That's one. And we have a white ribbon movement happening in developed countries. But in Africa, it hasn't touched anywhere. We are seeing people trying to do some, we need some people to understand the equal sex. We are both, people say both the sexes are equal, but the other women, they haven't registered that. And we find the other women that are stopping that movement to take place. Yeah. Because you can say, why are you going to report your husband? You're a woman, you have to persevere. You keep it in four walls in your bedroom. But you can't be dying for that. Yeah. In Australia, you do it. You can come and say, please forgive me, I'm not going to repeat it. But you do it again, they can say, look, I'm not going to keep it. I'm going to persevere with it. Please pack your bag or I'll call the police. Or the neighbor will call the police and everything will be exposed. So it's completely different. But I wish one day I can go back to the Africa and push up this movement. And I'm not feeling shy to say, look, I grew up in a house where both dad and mom were Christians. I'm a Roman Catholic, likewise, dad and mom. And the dad practices and mom both, they go to church and everything. But sitting with the dad and mom, I could see different messages coming from both of them. And as a boy, sometimes I had the privilege to sit with my dad. And my dad will talk on areas where his conversation, like promoting, you know, domestic violence is normal. And you as a boy, you must make sure you control your wife, you could do this, you become like, you know, when you are coming from there, everyone will know that you're coming back, and everyone has to be in order before you enter the building. But my mom will keep saying that you can't do those your dad is telling you. And I remember at my wedding, my mom cautioned me. When I went to say to my mom, I'm ready to get married, and mom said, look, I will say only two things. I said, the day you raise your hand up, you want to hit your wife, your hand will stuck in the air. And you can't bring it down, and the people will know you wanted to hit your wife. And you shouldn't do it. Remember, you do like this one, will stuck. And the other thing she said, the day you tell your wife not to work, that will be the end of your life. So you see, all the gates were shut down. And that's how I grew up knowing that why should I hit my wife? I say, I love you, and we'll be together until the death separates us. Why today should turn and become hitting her, filling up the pain? And I remember one day, one of my brother-in-law used to beat up his wife. But one day the wife got courage and he picked up the wooden spoon, hit him so hard, it break up the hand. And the guy was going, I'm getting a lot of pain. And I said, but when you're punching your wife, don't you think that she's also feeling a pain? Why only today you're feeling the pain, but the other day you don't feel the pain? So you can see what's happening there. So it's really good to us who have got opportunity to be this side. Don't forget, let's talk to our, when you're married, you have your family, talk to both your daughters and sons that domestic violence has no space in any civilized society. And let's talk to our brothers and sisters over there. Say, look, we are not animals, we shouldn't be fight. If there's some disagreement, let's find a solution. Let's talk, let's find out the solution.
So as an advocate, just before we conclude, what are some new measures, let's say things that are not in place at the moment that you would like to see introduced in dealing with domestic violence?
One thing which I've been critical, not whenever I get opportunity to say, look, how the government is funding the elimination of domestic violence, I'm not happy yet, because it keeps like a hit. You know, when you're running 100 meters, it's a hit. You run from here to there, you're finished, that's the end of it. But the domestic violence against women will never stop by one funding cycle. Because remember, it takes a generation to educate from one to the other, if we want to stop perpetuation of this behavior from one generation to the other. So I'm looking there where the government can commit a fund continues for 10 years on the same project. And then not only for a small group, and this project can be across the nation, where all schools, children, they can be able to go to year 1, they learn about positive relationship until they finish year 7. So if they go with the same attitude, and the parents at home they're talking the same, those children will be in an environment where they know that domestic violence is not acceptable, or violence against sexes is not acceptable, and they will grow with that one day. And I look forward to see the victims. I mean, not the victims of. I know there's a lot of services towards the victim of violence. Domestic violence, but I need also the perpetrators, to be taken into account, to be harsh to them, and the other men to learn that if you do this, there's a harsh consequences about it. Not this one, it goes, it drags, and then sometimes they say, okay, don't repeat again. No. I want things to be real. Be serious, be serious. It's an evil, social evil. Let's deal with it, and show people that you do it, you'll suffer the consequences. And if your culture is telling you do this, please let's start from there, that you can't. And also let's support, look up for the developed world, although we know domestic violence is not there, but it's not equal rates compared to where I come from, to see if we can also try to send the information to the other side and support them to reduce up the level of violence in the community.
Okay. You have sort of, in a way, say your last words, but something of your last message before we close.
Whoever going to be listening this message is to say, look, if you hear anyone or talking about in a negative way about women, don't keep quiet. Just educate that person that is not acceptable. And if you hear any woman about domestic violence, try to support them and direct them in the right direction. And if you're a community leader, please make this as a standalone topic in your community. And if you're a religious leader, make every day part of your sermons in the church is about a positive relationship. And don't support any man who is known that is committing domestic violence, or don't take any offering from those men. It's better you expose them and support them to change the attitude.
The offering.
It's better the offering to be low than take it to them while you know that they go home, they become evils and violent against the family. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Masika, I just want to say thank you for coming. As usual, it's not your first time on our program, and thanks once again. And thank you to my co-host Didi and Mamusu. And please, as usual, like our video, make comments and share. Thank you. Peace.